Welcome. Tonight, I want to tell you about the single most embarrassing fraud in the history of science. In 1912, a discovery in a gravel pit in Sussex, England, was hailed the missing link between apes and humans. For more than 40 years, the world's greatest experts built careers, theories, and textbooks around it. There was just one problem. It was a complete forgery. Over the next few minutes, I'll show you how it fooled everyone, and what that failure still teaches us today. Let me start with the headline that said it all. When the truth finally came out in 1953, the London Star didn't mince words. The biggest scientific hoax of the century. Picture that for a moment, a century that included 2 world wars, and this fraud still earned that title. It wasn't just a prank, it was a scandal that shook an entire field of science. And here's the uncomfortable question. How on earth did it last so long? Now look at this number, 41 years. From the day the bones were discovered in 1912 until they were exposed as fakes in 1953, Piltdown Man sat at the heart of human evolution research. Entire textbooks treated it as fact, and careers were built on studying it. And the whole time, it was a modern human skull glued to an orangutan's jaw. That is not a small mistake. It's a decades-long detour in our understanding of ourselves. What was actually claimed? The find was named Eoanthropus dawsoni, Dawson's Dawn Man. Its selling point was the combination, a large, modern-looking brain case sitting on top of a primitive, ape-like jaw. That combination was no accident. It matched, almost perfectly, the leading theory of the time, that our big brain evolved first before the rest of the body caught up. The specimen looked exactly the way British scientists wanted a missing link to look. And that, as we'll see, is precisely why it was so easy to fool them. Let's put 2 things side by side. On one side, what scientists expected to find. The prevailing theory, especially in Britain, was that intelligence came first in human evolution, so a big brain with a primitive jaw was exactly what they hoped to see. On the other side, what the fossil really was. A modern human skull, chemically stained to look ancient, attached to an orangutan's jaw whose teeth had been filed down to mimic human wear. The hoax worked because it flattered the experts' own expectations. They saw what they wanted to see. Here's where the fraud becomes almost embarrassing. Under a microscope, the teeth showed clear file marks. They'd been deliberately ground down to look like human wear. The bones had been stained with chemicals to match the local gravels. Even the tools and a supposedly ancient cricket bat were planted at the site. Every piece was engineered to fool an expert. The astonishing part isn't the sophistication of the forgery, it's how long it went unexamined. So how did a 40-year lie finally collapse? It began with quiet doubts, experts who noticed the jaw looked wrong, and a geologist who spotted an error in the site's dating as early as 1925. For decades, those warnings were ignored. Then came a new tool, fluorine dating, and in 1953, that tool, in the hands of a determined team, dismantled Piltdown Man piece by piece. Let me walk you through the timeline. Look at this timeline and notice how early the warning signs appeared. The first fragments were claimed in 1908, and the missing link was unveiled to the world in 1912. Yet as early as 1925, a full 28 years before the end, a geologist reported that the site's dating was wrong. That report was simply ignored. In 1949, fluorine testing proved the bones were far too recent. And finally, in 1953, the hoax collapsed in public. The fraud didn't survive scrutiny, it survived the absence of scrutiny. The decisive tool was fluorine dating. Bones absorb fluorine from groundwater over time, so an ancient fossil should be rich in it. When Kenneth Oakley and his team tested Piltdown Man, the results were damning. The skull and the jaw didn't match, and both were far too young. Working with Joseph Weiner and Wilfred LeGros Clark, they showed the whole thing was assembled, a modern skull and an orangutan jaw, artfully aged. On November 21, 1953, the world got the news. The missing link was missing nothing at all. It had never existed. Now let's turn to why this matters today. Piltdown Man is more than a funny story about a fake fossil. It's a warning about what happens when evidence is locked behind closed doors. After the discovery, a few gatekeepers controlled access to the original bones, and critics couldn't examine them. Doubt was treated as disloyalty, and science stalled for decades. The lesson is uncomfortable, but we need to look at it directly. So what do we take away? 3 commitments. First, demand access. Evidence must be open so others can test it, as the open science movement insists today. Second, replicate before you celebrate. A claim isn't knowledge until it's been independently checked. Third, welcome doubt. The scientists who ignored their critics for decades were the real enablers of the hoax. Piltdown Man fooled the world for 41 years, not because the forgery was perfect, but because authority was trusted more than evidence. Let's make sure the next great claim faces better scrutiny than this one did.